Okay, well, welcome everybody to the 2023 Open Educational Resources Annual Business Meeting. This meeting is held annually, as you might surmise from the title of today's meeting. Most SIGs hold their meeting at ABAI's annual meeting at its various locations, but we are a little on the rebellious, spicy side, and we are not doing that. We are holding our meeting prior to that so that we can make sure that it is as accessible as possible for everyone, both by making it 100% online and also freeing up people's schedule. So if they are in fact going to that conference, they can use that time to engage in other opportunities that they wish to do while they are in Denver. So we are choosing to hold this through this. We also realize a lot of people aren't attending the conference for various other reasons as well. So we are going to go ahead and do that. At this point in time, while our driver is in fact out of his seat, might be wishing somebody else was driving, but we'll give Brian a moment to come back. Everybody here should be a member. That's why you're sitting here. You were invited to this meeting today. Session slides are available at the QR code. So we are glad to have you. Just a few notes about our mission and what it is that we do, which is where we would be going on our next slides. Our mission is to promote adoption, creation, and dissemination of open educational resources in ABA, and we hope that you share that same passion, and that's why you're here. Brian, if you could drive us forward just a little bit, that would be fantastic.
Apologies, there was a error in bottle preparation, so getting assistance.
This is our agenda here today, so getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Welcome you here. Take a look at some of these things we're going to do today. I don't anticipate this being a very long meeting, except for we hope to generate a call for ideas conversation at the end, Q&A, as we transfer leadership to our new president during today's meeting, and welcome some new folks. And so we'll stay as long as the conversation takes us. Brian, if you would continue us forward a little bit so we can continue talking about our mission and purpose. If you keep going just a little bit, that's what happens when I'm not driving. So here we go. We've talked a bit about our mission. We all share this. We do find that our draw, because of our mission, tends to be people who are educators. And by educators, I don't necessarily mean faculty at universities. I think as behavior analysts, we are all educators in some capacity. We seem to, at least what I've noticed in the last year in particular, is as I've been putting together the continuing ed certificates for folks, a lot of the people who I'm sending those certificates to are at .edu email addresses. So we are having a lot of folks who are in those faculty roles, but not necessarily. We're getting a lot of practitioners as well. So a lot of diversity in terms of roles of people who are sharing this interest and this mission. Brian, if you'd keep us going forward here, our specific goals and how we're going to go ahead and do this, and what we want to do, how we're going to do that, is we want to make sure that we are providing information, sharing about quality, open or zero cost. Not all open access or zero cost resources, of course, are open educational resources in terms of educational training. And also provide a forum, an outlet, a place for folks who are like-minded to share information or gather to share, co-create open educational resources, engage in projects together, maybe work together to reduce some of that workload. There was some conversation at the end of last week's event where one of the attendees was talking about a project that they were particularly interested in. And I think Dr. Pavone made a great comment about, how can we work together as folks become an interest to share the workload. And that's part of the purpose and the joy of this organization, is thinking about ways that we might be able to do that. Right, there we go. One of our goals is to disseminate information to promote our mission. Probably the most common way that we do that is through our continuing ed events, because that is a draw for us to be able to get the word out, but we certainly want to be able to do that in other ways by talking and sharing about what it is that we do. and to organize this annual meeting to have a forum where we can talk with our membership beyond just the board that meets and communicates regularly, so that we can talk about the affairs of the special interest group and generate ideas and see what the interest is beyond just the executive board, what you all would like us to do and engage in the coming year. So what did we do this past year in particular related to continuing ed? So what I have here in these next few slides are just a summary of specifically our continuing ed events, going back over the last year, going back to 1 year ago today, specifically to Dr. Tyra Sellers. So I won't read these, but I want you to kind of take a look. And as I was typing these into the tables on these slides, what I particularly liked was just how diverse in topics these are. When I talk to my students, so many of them come into these master's programs, these ABA programs, with this preconceived notion that ABA is autism education, that it's disability education, and to be able to see how incredibly diverse and varied the continuing ed opportunities we were able to offer were over the course of the last year is something that I'm really proud that we were able to do. And I hope that the SIG will be able to continue to do, and I'm confident that the SIG will be able to continue to do as things go forward. And the most recent one last Thursday with Shauna Costello. So more exciting things coming up. That is something I'm going to go ahead and pass this to either Brian or Veronica, whoever wants to give us a little bit of a preview of some events that are coming up the pipeline here pretty soon. I'll mute my microphone for a little bit.
Veronica, how about you go ahead and take this, since I've got a slightly fussy baby that I'm trying to soothe.
Oh my goodness, everybody. I am so excited to tell you about some of the events that we're having this summer, and we have events scheduled for the next 3 months, which I hope that you'll be able to join us for. We will proceed, of course, to the next slide as we are able, but you know how babies are sometimes. Okay, so our first, oh, sorry, back one, Brian. Thank you. Our first guest speaker for the summer is going to be a kind of counterpoint to the event that we had just a week ago. We'll be having Jennifer Claypatch-Toch come and talking about the flip side of the coin, some of the challenges that can happen when you're disseminating in the open, ethical considerations when you're developing content, especially content with students and supervisees. In July, we're having the first of our methodologically focused CE events. We're going to be welcoming Dr. Matt Broadhead to talk a little bit about the What Works Clearinghouse standards and how they apply in the work that we do, especially in our research and our practice. And then in August, super excited to have Janani Vaida joining us. And we've been working on this presentation for over 1.5 years, talking about dismantling binaries, talking about the behavioral conceptualization of gender. So that's what we have coming up in the next 3 months. And it's going to be a hot, hot summer. If you're not already registered as a member, remember that registering is one of the best ways to get informed about these events. All of the members who are in our Google discussion group or our Facebook group get these updates and get notification when it's time to register for these events. So if you're not already a member, you may want to scan that QR code and I'll pop a link into the chat.
Thank you, Veronica. So, Rachel, did you want to take this one, or would you like me to?
I'll take it. I'm happy to, Brian. So I am, and I will have some closing remarks here in a little bit. So I'm not going to dwell long on this particular slide, but I will be getting ready to, during this meeting, conclude my role as president of the special interest group, but will remain a very, very active member of the special interest group, and I'm excited to be doing that. But Brian, if you would kindly move to
I will dwell on that last slide though, and I apologize. I did not read my stage notes very well. Let's go back. I will dwell on this slide. Please allow me to take a moment just to summarize briefly for you the amazing tenure of one President Rachel Potter. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but in November, let's say pre-pando, does that sound right, Dr. Potter? I believe it was 2019, a time. What is time? Time is construct. Let's all join together. Dr. Potter was serving as one of our inaugural board members for the Open Educational Resources SIG. And at that time, our amazing president and co-founder had to step away due to personal reasons. So, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We're in a constitutional crisis. We have no president. What will we do? And that is where Dr. Potter stepped in to serve for 1 year as the interim president until we could hold an election. And then this tiny international pandemic occurred. Yeah, I'm not sure if you were there or not. You might recall. And so while it seemed like a wonderful opportunity to try new things, etc., we looked at our membership and we said, hey, everybody, what would you like to do? Would you like us to hold a formal election? Shall we do the thing with the nominations? And our membership was like, no, no, no. Dr. Potter has served as such an impeccable leader during this time of crisis that we would like Dr. Potter to stay on as the elected president. So not 1, not 2, but 3 years of impeccable leadership by one Dr. Rachel Potter, serving as honestly the core and the backbone, the structure, the regular drumbeat that keeps our organization going. And if it were not for Dr. Potter, I am not sure that our SIG would be here today. So I just want to take a moment here to leave an uncomfortable silence while we all make strange Zoom Muppet arms to thank Dr. Potter for her incredible service to the mission of making our field more accessible and making resources more available to everyone in behavior analysis.
You are kind, Dr. Howard. Thank you. That is very kind. I think it's all code for Dr. Potter is a sucker, but I've learned a great deal ultimately, and I will share a little bit more about that later. But it is it's been a learning experience, and I'm grateful for that for sure. But we do also have another board member who is departing today, who is not able to join us today due to another family obligation, but I do want to share a little bit about Clint Evans, who has been on our board since 2020. We joined the board about the same time, which means Clint has also had that extra year of board membership when we froze elections. So having served in an additional year, but beyond his term, Clint Evans rolls off the board as a member at large this year. Clint is a full-time BCBA in the field, also a doctoral student, an entrepreneur with a vision for healthful dissemination of applied behavior analysis. Through his endeavors with Behavior Chef, he's been able to bring OERs to the field through his online platform. Examples include a podcast centered on healthful behavior, a weekly seminar pairing behavior principles with everyday cooking examples, a group of 4,000 people who are discussing healthful behavior as it relates to ABA and the principles of behaviorism. Clint's a current member of the Missouri Association for Behavior Analysis and is very active in the work that he does there. So the SIG leadership's been very grateful to Clint for his contributions, for the work of the team, and certainly wishes him well in those ongoing endeavors for disseminating the science of behavior analysis in the way he does, and his growing specialization in the world of health and wellness as it relates to ABA. So Clint is not here, but we wish Clint well and are very grateful for Clint's contributions. Brian, if you'd continue to move us forward. So with outgoing membership, that also means that we are delighted to welcome new folks. Those of you who are here today likely participated in our most recent spring election. We had a vacancy for a member at large, and I'm pleased today, as we do during our annual business meetings, to announce that the winner of that election was Dr. Jennifer Haddock, who is here with us today. And I would love to share a little about Dr. Jennifer Haddock as we welcome her. So as Clint rolls off our board, we welcome Dr. Haddock. Dr. Haddock is a board certified behavior analyst at the doctoral levels, currently serving as adjunct faculty in the online master's program in the Department of Behavioral Science at the University of Kansas. As a consultant for ACEs for Autism in Greenville, North Carolina, a full member of ABAI. Her research, teaching, and clinical and service interests include assessment and treatment of challenging behavior, conceptual foundations of behavior analysis, performance management, measurement, and research design and applications of behavior analysis in everyday life. Jennifer is committed to dissemination of behavioral philosophy, science, and ensuring faculty, students, and practitioners have free access to educational resources. Certainly sounds like that aligns to our mission. She's also committed to maintaining work-life balance. I try, or she likes to call it life balance. Jennifer demonstrates these values in her open access educational blog, Everyday Behaviorist, where she writes about how she applies behavioral science to complex issues in her everyday life, finding balance through gardening, yoga, meditation, hugging trees, and walking around barefoot. Welcome, Jennifer, to your role on the executive board of the OER SIG. We're certainly glad to welcome you.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. And that definitely, it sounds different when you read it. So I might have to change that. But it's so great to be here and to see you all in person. And thank you so much. I look forward to being part of this and learning a lot.
You definitely, I did. So not to imply that you don't know much, but I can tell you, I learned a phenomenal amount. So that is something that I am so grateful for. So
I've already learned a lot going through the discussion board and some of the old posts and stuff. So yeah, I'm excited.
Welcome, Jennifer. Brian, could you move us forward a little bit? There we go. So here is a summary of leadership as it will move forward after just a few minutes from now when we get ready to transfer over leadership. I'm thinking we have another slide as we do our presidential leadership transfer over here in a little bit, but we should have some upcoming elections next spring. We will have 2 positions that will have elections coming up. So anticipate an election for another member at large and also for president-elect. All right, so I promised a few concluding remarks. And so I'm happy to do those for you. So as Dr. Howard mentioned, when I joined the SIG in 2020, it was by invitation through another member of the SIG who I knew who taught with me, Dr. Sain, who is here today. I really did not know much about open educational resources. I'd heard the term mostly through the context of open access or open pedagogy. But I had a lot of respect for others who were in the organization. But then in November of that year, as Dr. Howard mentioned, there was an unexpected vacancy and stepped into that presidential role. And I'm still finding myself very much a novice, but have learned a great deal, particularly thanks to Dr. Howard, not only through the SIG, but also through my work at the university. To aid my understanding of OER and inspiring me ways to also engage my students in that work and thinking of ways that I can engage in open pedagogical practice with my students as well. And that's been a great deal of fun in this process. Perhaps the greatest thing that I have learned, and am still very much a learner, is the importance of materials being accessible. And some might suggest, well, that's not just OER. I mean, but it's part of and is very much an important part of the mission and part of the purpose. And any discussion of OER absolutely requires conversation surrounding accessibility. And so I am continually reflecting on how inaccessible, frankly, my own teaching and administrative materials have been over the years, largely out of ignorance. So through this group and through what I have learned, I've gained by far a better understanding of what it means to value accessibility and to actually follow through with those actionable steps. And being able to model that some for others as well. So I'm extremely appreciative of these past years, and know that OER and open access and open pedagogical practice and accessibility are going to continue to be a really important part of my ongoing professional work. And so that actionable change is something that I am very, very grateful for because of these last few years. And I don't know that I would have become as aware of that as I am had it not been for my involvement in the SIG. So I'm very grateful for that. So Brian, if you'd move us forward a little bit here. So before I let Brian turn on his new microphone, as mentioned earlier, we did have our time calendar put on hold for a year. So Brian has actually been our president-elect for an atypical 2 years instead of 1 year. And Brian is a remarkable human, a board certified behavior analyst, but one who happens to be neurodiverse and speaks very openly about that experience. And that has been a wonderful learning tool for those of us who are open to listening and learning from that. For the benefit of the field and beyond, Brian's unique lens has sparked his own entrepreneurial spirit. Spirit is the creator behind the Bearded Behaviorist, Behave, Act Natural podcasts, and the latest professional adventure, as far as I know, to Brian's becoming involved with mindful behavior. And I hope, Brian, that you'll talk a little bit more about mindful behavior here shortly when you do turn on your microphone. Brian, his prior experience as a special ed teacher, is currently licensed as a BCBA in Tennessee, very active and passionate, very, very clearly about using social media for disseminating the science, but not just the science, but social justice related to the science through that lens, with a particular interest in neurodivergence, trauma-informed practice, and holding professional organizations and leaders in our field accountable through their words and actions. Brian is, as you have seen in this meeting today, a devoted dad to the lovely Miss Vera, born earlier this year. And I am pleased to have shared this more formal introduction to you of Brian and Miss Vera. So at this time, I am pleased to formally transition leadership to Brian as our new SIG president, and we will honor that transition is in effect. So welcome, President Brian Middleton, to continue with our meeting's agenda today.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Before I start talking about my particular address, I want to make sure that I also voice the gratitude and appreciation for Dr. Potter for your work. It has been amazing. You truly kept this boat afloat, and you and Veronica have been the beating heart and the circulatory system that has kept this going. I have very big shoes to fill, and I hope I do this role justice. So thank you, Dr. Potter, for your work. And also thank you to our scribe, Veronica, for their persistent and consistent amazing work. So want to honor those, as well as our other board members too. Thank you very much for that introduction. One of the most important things that I think that we need to center with the work that we're doing is understanding that accessibility is about addressing environmental factors that create inequality, that create inequity, that set everybody up for failure. And one of the very important things that my work, both through Bearded Behaviorist and Mindful Behavior, and notably here through the SIG, I want to center is that while neurodiversity is definitely an area that I'm speaking to and from, also what must be understood is that this work is the work of addressing those problems in the environment for everyone. Because the reality is that when we have systems that are inequitable, everybody loses. Even the people who are benefiting from the system lose, because those systems are causing gaps and making it harder for us to be able to collaborate and problem solve. But when we seek to address those systems and open access, open education, those are objectives that seek to be a part of the solution. What we're doing is we're bettering the baseline for everyone. So whether or not whether the work is specifically in neurodiversity or in race and equitability, in queer rights, in any of the areas that we're operating and working in, or even in just regular dissemination every day, so parents can learn how to support their children effectively as their children go through the learning process, regardless of their neurology. It's all about bringing that baseline up and doing the work that we do as behavior analysts. I'm really excited for what the future brings with what we're doing, because already between the work that OER has done, the work that I've been able to do through Bearded Behaviors, through where others have been able to do amazing work, the work that Mindful Behavior is doing, and other organizations alongside Mindful Behavior that we collaborate with and work with, such as the PFA SBT group and many others. The idea is to bring resources to bear so that people are not feeling lost, people are not feeling stuck. And that really is a big part of what we're going for, is not removing struggle, because struggle is a part of life, but alleviating suffering so that there's more choices, there's more opportunities, there's more chances for everybody to grow. So welcome, and also thank you for this privilege and this honor. I hope to do this work justice. I'm going to be navigating the joys of being a father, a parent, along this path. I will also be navigating being a multiple business owner and a working behavior analyst. I work predominantly in disability support services, although I'm expanding the areas that I serve, because I'm now working with adults. And I hope to be able to bring some of that knowledge that I learn, and not just high support needs adults, but actually moderate and low support need adults as well. So I hope to bring some of that knowledge and expertise in, and also hope to bring in more specialists and people who are knowledgeable to share with us. So on that note, recruitment and retention is a big deal. We would like to be able to get more active engagement with our members, and start creating more open educational resources. And thankfully, the last CE that we had gave us some guidance on how to do that through supervision. And it really is the young behavior analysts who are going to shape the future of our field. Definitely want to make sure that the more established and mature guard, I don't like the term old guard. I think that's exclusionary. So I prefer a mature and established guard needs to be included as a part of this process. And so we need to be actively engaging and inviting, and at the same time having that guidance and that perspective of how to provide atypical supervision for the with the opportunity to create open educational resources is a wonderful opportunity that we can do, as well as getting the word out there through all the avenues, how to participate. One of the things that I would like to request for those who are participants in the academic quarter is that I've noticed through the conferences I've been attending that there's a lot of folks within the academic community who maybe don't participate as actively in social media. And that is a potential challenge for recruitment for our objectives. And so for those who are within the academic setting, I ask that you speak a little bit more on this topic and invite them to participate. And then likewise with the social media side, we're working on recruitment and advertising more consistently. As a part of our efforts for that is making resources available. And there's a lot of things that are in the works, and we want to be able to make sure that the things that are in the works are not just limited to these particular areas, but we do have the challenge of time and available energy to be able to dedicate towards it. And so we ask that all members be active in this part of the process, even if you're not an active participant in the executive board. But looking for ways to improve dissemination and get the message out about these resources. One of the upcoming resources is, because I am a partner in mindful behavior, I am navigating the process for mindful behavior to be able to host the recorded presentations that we have that have been done, so that anybody, regardless of their membership, can access the continuing education and be receiving of CEUs through that process. And one of the things that is goes along with that is mindful behavior has completed the process to be able to provide continuing education credits for international behavior analysts. So that way we can continue to support our international friends. It's not fully established yet, mostly because we're getting the website set up and moved in the direction we need to. However, the plan is to make open educational resources available through mindfulbehaviorllc.org, so that anybody can be able to access those resources. Along those same lines, we are looking to find other avenues for making those resources available. So while I'm limited in my energy and unfortunately I'm only able to focus on so many things at once, if anybody has connections with other organizations that would be willing to do this likewise with hosting OER content, we would encourage, the board would encourage that you explore those resources and invite others to participate, with an emphasis on open education, making the resources available for free or for very inexpensive, preferably free, because there's definitely an issue of equitability. Ryan, you have your hand up.
I do. Quick question on sharing the resources. Obviously, Sitecore is pivoting on some things right now, and one of the things we're pivoting on is access to providing those same resources. Is it going to be feasible for us to partner with Mindful Behavior to offer in conjunction at the same time for free? So you have multiple sources, or do you want us to, you know what I mean? So for another organization to offer that support, is it a copy of, or is it a redirect to?
My opinion on open education, and this might be a discussion that the board has, but my opinion is that open is open, which means there are going to be other organizations that are going to be providing competing free access, and that's fine. I think that we should ensure that that is the case and that OER lives in multiple places. I made it very clear to my business partner that OER, my intent is not to make sure that only mindful behavior has access to this, because that's not what open education is. So if Behavior Live or CE Unicorn or Central Reach or anyone else out there is interested in hosting our content and making it available for free, I think that we should jump on that and make sure it's available. There's definitely a positive advantage of having smaller organizations being the ones that are hosting open ed. And at the same time, this is about everyone. So let's get it out there. Let's disseminate. Was that a good answer? Cool. And one of the things that mindful behavior is trying to do more of, we're facing the challenge of resources, which everybody is facing, of course, but we're working on creating open educational resources of our own that would partner alongside the SIG. So that way it increases access and equitability. Right now, there's a lot of stuff that's in planning and nothing has been executed as of yet. So the SIG welcomes any and all suggestions and recommendations. With that, we got some
wonderful segue. I love that. Talking about like what ideas folks have, questions that they have, suggestions.
Some of those recommendations can also be on CEU topics. Maybe you don't have specific knowledge on resources for distribution, but you might have a SIG topic that you really want to jump on, or maybe it's we don't have a lot of publications that are out there, so it would be really neat to be able to start providing some more. Like, we do have some, and I know that there's some projects in process, especially creating an open textbook and a few other resources out there. But right now we're very limited on behavioral support training for parents, for behavior analysts and training, for professionals such as teachers or other corresponding professions. And so that would be something that we would encourage, especially when it comes to collaboration with other fields.
Veronica's prompting me. Thank you. I am about to redo my grad level learning class, and the learning class is directed at clinical psychologists, so they have nothing. I mean, they like, some of them may have taken a couple of behavioral classes, and we use primary sources. I use all article reviews. I use a lot of Psych-Core videos. Thank you. And I spend a lot of time, and I'm about to spend a lot more time this summer making those articles accessible, because they are not from any of our primary journals, like at all, like not even tagged, half of them. Particularly the older ones, but even the more recent ones aren't tagged. So I'm spending a lot of time doing that, and I'm willing to share it, but I don't think I can. But I welcome ideas about how we could share things that we spend a lot of time making accessible.
I love that you bring the note on accessibility too, because I would love for us to work on accessibility in the form of the deaf community. I've been collaborating with Jackie Wunderlich, who is a deaf autistic behavior analyst, and she has some amazing content. And one of the challenges we face is funding to be able to pay translators. and there are translators who provide volunteer services, but I think that's something that we should explore and consider, because that's an entire community that we could be able to provide very important services for, not just those who have multiple yes, interpreters. I'm sorry, did I say something different? Apologies. But yeah, so there's people who have multiple co-occurring conditions, but also deaf people are people. Behavior applies, and so we could very much expand into a community and broaden our horizons when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and potentially provide some wonderful resources. Ryan, I saw you had unmuted. I apologize if I spoke over you.
You did not. I think I was going to say something, and then the point was lost because somebody else was already on it, and it's being addressed appropriately without my commentary.
Cool. I will tell you right now that Jackie is interested. I saw your comment, Veronica. Jackie is interested in trying to make it open and free. So obviously got to operate within the confines of what we have available. And I'm not going to speak specifically for her. However, I will say that the conversations we've had, she is very interested in trying to bridge these gaps. She recently did an amazing continuing education presentation on deaf culture and deaf history. And my eyes were very much widely opened, and I had no idea about the information that she had shared. So very much important.
And when we're talking about like the lens of accessibility, I want to return to Kate's point, because what's most troubling about what you're sharing, Kate, is you would expect a lack of accessibility. And by that, I mean, the PDF documents are not set up to be accessible and readable by a screen reading device. Like that's a lot of the issue, right, Kate? Like there's no headings, there's no alt text. It doesn't flow in a way that's necessary for folks who would be using devices to help them read or understand that content. And that's true for folks with visual impairments, folks who use like screen readers. Like, I don't know if it's okay to disclose, but Brian, I know you really enjoy the screen reader that you have to read articles. I would love it too. Like you're saying, there are issues with accessibility. I would expect it for the old articles. The fact that it's still occurring on an article published today in 2023, despite the fact that our ethics code has been updated to explicitly reference diversity, accessibility, that's troublesome. Like that's problematic. And I think that that's an area where our SIG could actually do some really good work through direct, persistent advocacy to groups that have greater leverage. Like we know, for instance, that ABAI has a lot of clout with publishers. And so why then is it that ABAI would allow our flagship journals to reside with publishing houses that benefit financially from our support, yet do not give us the services that we need to be in compliance with our own ethical code?
Thank you for
Veronica, preach.
recentering that. I appreciate you bringing that back on, because I didn't mean to speak over what you were saying, Kate. More trying to add to. Did you want to add anything, Kate?
No, I'm a big girl. I went to UNR. We used to yell at each other all the time, actually, so we're good. I agree. I mean, in a previous very young adult life, I was an interpreter. So I think all the things that we can do, I think often with at least captioning, it's easier to provide content for people with the deaf population or people with hearing impairments. If you pay even a little attention to the captioning, it's going better. I mean, interpreters are important, but the PDFs are just, they are a nightmare.
Yeah. I see, Jennifer, that you use Natural Reader. I do as well. It's perhaps one of my favorite. because it really does sound like a natural voice. So, but it's expensive. It costs $120 a year. So, Veronica.
If I might bring up another topic that we've talked about and kind of unpack that a little bit more. Brian, you mentioned that we don't have a lot of materials that are published in the open. And I try to catch them when I can. So for instance, I just want to remind everybody of that amazing review of FBA done by FAME, and the first author was a student. I'm going to go find that link again, just to remind everybody how amazing it is that not only is it there, that it was published, that it is contemporary, and it is open. The Spiker and Kirby and oh, I forget her last name, but Trish, help me out. Humble Behaviorist, that is published open. But aside from those two articles, one on open educational resources and a fourth that I declined to name specifically, I can't think of any other articles that are published under an open license. And forgive me if I'm person-splaining to the folks who are assembled, in order to make an article available under an open license, not just for free, but under an open license and unembargoed, you have to pay article processing fees, an APC. And the current APC for many of the flagship journals, we're talking about JABA, JAB, Behavior Analysis and Practice, because they're all sort of within a single publisher, they're north of $2,800. So how can we publish in the open if we don't have grant funding that makes that feasible for us? Most of us are not at institutions where the libraries or some other initiative at those institutions have a pot of funds for article processing fees. And again, if our journals reside with publishing houses that are raking in billions of dollars every year, it seems as if our leaders of the field who steward these journals might be able to help in that respect.
Well, and that leads to some other questions, which is what organizations can we partner with towards furthering open educational resources? I would argue that we should be actively seeking to collaborate with organizations that are committed in more than just words to DEA. DEI, my bad. I can say with some confidence that BABA is very much interested in collaboration in that regard. I can also say that the president of APBA, Tyra Sellers, who was one of our presenters last year, is interested in participating and collaborating. So perhaps APBA would be another organization that we could collaborate with for furthering open publications. And I'm sure that if we were to reach out to other organizations such as Latin applied behavior analysts and women in behavior analysis, that there would hopefully be some openness towards that. So that's where hoping for folks to take some initiative and start those conversations. I can also say that Leap Institute is interested in that because they actually do a lot of open things. So, Brad, thank you for your comment. If you don't mind, I'll read it out loud for those who aren't reading the comments. It's important to check in with your library. For those of y'all who are in university sectors, my library has read and write agreements with several big publishers where they prioritize open access. Thus, my colleagues were here focus on only publishing in those journals where we are committed to publishing open access. Thank you. That's a great resource. Any other thoughts? Go for it, Ryan.
One of the things that has always struck a challenge in the OER sector world is finding funding to do the OERs, to pay for these things. That's kind of what we're spinning around here. We're talking about things like ABAI and BABA. We're not talking about the businesses that can make a difference. We need to talk about the Sergey Brins. We need to get the Googles. We need to get those folks, the ones that started the whole movement in the first place. So I think one of the things that I struggle with is knowing who to call, when to call them, and what to say. So I wonder if we can spend some time over the next 6 months initiating a plan for how to go about getting this endeavor funded. Because an OER textbook is going to take a half a dozen people several years to write. And there's going to be, you know, good feelings at the end of that, hopefully promotions and things of that sort for the academic crowd. But in terms of other people, there's very little financial incentive whatsoever to create OERs. As you know, from an online world, you know, that you don't, the pay is garbage unless you get millions and millions and millions of views. And we don't do that. So I think we need to find somebody that is going to step up to the plate and say, you know what, these journal issues, they're a real issue. And here's $10 million that we're going to devote to addressing this. You know what I mean? And buying out all of, Veronica, I can't remember that term that you used for, or whatever that term was for the 3 letters that when you have to pay for the pay to open it up. Anyway, if we can get APC, thank you. So if we can get something like that covered for 500 journals, 500 publications, now you're starting about making a difference. And I would love BABA and all those to be involved, but we're doing fundraisers for BABA every year. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know where to go. I'm at a loss. That was what my world, my old world before I was into this world. Now we did this stuff internationally. We did have that funding, but that was all through governments, and I don't have access to. They don't make grants for us to share behavior. No, maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe we should need to look at grants. I don't know. Just ideas and just kind of. I don't know. I'm frustrated with that the money aspect. I really am, and I know we need to get somebody on board that can address that to some level. Or at least start chipping away at it. Maybe they don't have pockets, but maybe they can help with something else. I just don't know.
Well, and that might be a thing to approach different organizations with, especially with ideas on how to approach these things.
Right.
A lot of times, so there's the upcoming. This is a realization I had today. We have that upcoming change in how we are supposed to be teaching our behavior analysts in training, where they're supposed to get now OBM training integrated in. And this might be an opportunity to as educators, teach people about how OBM influences things like this and open access and whatnot. But it's also an opportunity to teach about how organizations impact individual behavior, and individual behavior impacts organizations as well, because what we're doing is in many regards social justice work. And so educating the up and coming learners on how they can advocate and initiate change would be highly beneficial. And perhaps that could be a part of the process of exploring whether or not using that the resource of learners, behavior analysts in training who are interested in initiating change, and seeing if we could use that as unrestricted supervision time for grant writing, or for similar types of things, or producing resources that get the attention of those big organizations. But yeah, you're right. It's a very big challenge. So I think that's a good stopping point. I do want to make sure that as we stop here, that we don't stop with feeling discouraged. In fact, if anything, with the work that we have coming up, sorry for the quick scroll through, with the upcoming events, and there's others in the works, by the way, so we're excited for that, but also for the events that we have done. let's make sure that we're not stopping by feeling disheartened, because we have done great work and we should continue to do great work, and get the word out there. The thing that my dad used to say over and over again is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Not that I'm sure that we should be eating elephants, but just that is the process. And so we should definitely start with one bite at a time. You should never be apologetic for having the community cats manding for food. That is adorable.
I mean, its little face is like very cute. Thank y'all all so much for doing all this work, and I'm glad to finally find out about you recently.
Thank you for the work you're doing. It's appreciated as well. Well, thank you for all who've attended. And I think this is a good point for us to go ahead and wrap it up. Please, for board members, remain for a moment. Let's take a, let's call it a 5-minute recess for bathroom breaks and taking care of other human needs. And for those who are not board members, we ask that you jump off so that way we can keep the roll a showing, and we'll go from there. Thank you, everyone.
Question for Scribe and for Brian. Because I am the Zoom host for this meeting, before I depart and the e-board remains, do you want me to stop recording? If I stop recording,